Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. My name is Tom Kresh. I'm the Director of Graduate Admissions here at Commonwealth U. Thank you again for joining us on a beautiful Wednesday night here in April. We appreciate your time. We plan to have a great event where we will be covering 3 of our Masters in Education programs tonight. The event should take around 40 or 45 minutes. We have a presentation, and then following we'll have an open Q&A. And also, if you have any questions throughout the course of the presentation, please don't hesitate to ask. We'll be answering questions as we go along. This event is being recorded, and this will be posted on the departmental website as soon as it is ready, which should be probably later this week or early next week. So whether you are watching online or you're watching the recording, again, thank you for your time. But before we go any further, if we could start with some introductions, starting with Dr. Starmack.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Tom Sarmack. I am the program coordinator for these 3 programs currently, and I teach, obviously, graduate courses in the Ed Leadership program for Commonwealth University, and we're excited to share what we have to offer with you tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. And Dr. Hosley.
Hi, I'm Dr. Nate Hosley, and teach in the curriculum instruction program, alternative education track, and teach in a little bit in the Ed Leadership program as well. I've been here a little over 30 years and enjoy very much teaching in at the graduate level. So looking forward to meeting you.
Dr. Hosley, what is your teaching background? So prior to entering the world of higher ed and academia, what was your teaching background?
My before entering the university setting, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
My background my education background is in counseling and ed leadership. Most of my background is counseling. For a number of years worked as a counselor, and then moved to higher ed and got my doctorate degree in education leadership, and have been working with schools ever since that time, so about 20 years ago.
Great. Well, thank you. So Dr. Starmack, I will go ahead and turn it over to you to kick off the presentation here.
All right. Well, good evening and welcome to our virtual information session. And tonight we're going to talk about 3 different graduate programs that we have to offer through educational leadership. And those are the curriculum instruction program. It's a master's of curriculum instruction. There's 6 different potential tracks within there that you can choose from. We'll get into educational leadership, which we're going to talk about 2 specific tracks tonight, and that's the principal certification and the PK-12 supervisory certification program. We're going to start off with the curriculum instruction master's degree, which is a master's of education and curriculum instruction. You would come into the program, and on a future slide, I'll show you there's 4 core classes. So that's 12 credits. And then you would select one of these tracks. So we have the alternative ed track, which a lot of people think, well, that's, is that working so you can work in an alternative ed setting? And the answer is no. What that is that you gain a whole bunch of information, knowledge, and skills that are related to working with at-risk and difficult children that sometimes are, find themselves in situations where they might be being placed out in alternative ed. But our goal here is to provide you as educators with some knowledge and skills to be able to better work with them in a normal public school or private school setting. We have a social emotional behavior wellness endorsement. This is actually a PDE endorsement that you could add on to your teaching license. You could get an English as a second language certification. That's actually a PDE certification that you can do. That's a track. There's an e-learning specialist certificate. So you would learn about how to develop instruction in an online environment more effectively. And this certificate is a Commonwealth University certificate. It's not a PDE one. So in other words, like if you finish a Microsoft Office class, they might give you a certificate showing your competencies. That's what you would get as far as the certificate here. There's also an instructional game designing certificate. It's also a Commonwealth certificate. And then we have an interest-based track where maybe you're not real sure where you want to go yet, but you want to dabble a little bit, maybe take some classes in, leadership, maybe take a couple in social emotional wellness, maybe alternative ed, and we build it and custom build it for what you would want, is how that interest-based track works. All of our classes are 100% online. We have students currently from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, all across the state. You would meet your 24, anybody that's getting their first instructional license, you all need 24 post-baccalaureate credits towards instructional 2 license. You would actually be earning those because our classes all meet the PDE requirements for that. You get to enhance your knowledge and skills as a master teacher. You could move into some leadership roles for some advancement. And then obviously, as you heard, there's some tracks in there that you can add on and add a license and make yourself more marketable because you're adding on to your teaching license. There are 30 credits total for the whole program, and the track courses are listed here. So you have data-driven decisions is the first track, one of the track classes. In that you learn about action research, data, how to utilize data to make decisions. You actually will do a small lit review along with an action research project. Every student in a master's of C&I takes school law, ethics, and finance. We feel it's important to have that foundational understanding of how schools are funded, and then also have an understanding of ethics and law so that you're making informed decisions as educators. Curriculum theory and design, since it's a master's of curriculum and instruction, we want to make sure that you have an understanding of the basic theory and design of how curriculum is historically and then where we are currently. And then since it's a master's degree, everyone takes a research and writing course, which in that class you will do a more in-depth review of literature, as well as learn about all the different forms of research and their uses in a practical setting. And then afterwards, you have your track classes, and most tracks are anywhere from 12 credits. Some tracks are 12 credits, some tracks are 15 credits, and I don't think there's any that are 18. But remember, you got to have 30 credits. So you have 12 from the core. And then if you would have a 12 credit track, that gives you 6 credits of electives where you could pick up electives. If you have a 15 credit track, then you would get 3 credits of free electives. And that's pretty much how that program works.
Dr. Starmack, would you be able to explain a little bit about, so for students who are in the curriculum and instruction program, what might a semester look like? I would imagine most students are probably taking 6 credits or 9 credits, and there's probably some degree of combination between the required courses and the track courses. How might that breakdown look?
So good question. We offer classes in the summer, the fall, and the spring. And we kind of build it off of what the student would like to have, as well as if you're currently employed in a school district, we try to work with the student with their reimbursement of what that district provides. Some districts provide 12 credits of reimbursement a year. Some do 9, some have unlimited. So we're able to almost build the program or the courses around so that they're meeting and getting the reimbursement from their districts, or they can go through fairly quickly. We do have some students that do 9 credits each semester, and then the following semester do 3. Very rarely do we have anybody ever take 12. A typical student would take either 3 or 6 credits, especially during the fall or spring when they're currently teaching. And in the summer, they would take, once again, either 3, 6, or potentially 9, because in the summer they're off depending on, the cycle of what's being offered. Most of our students cycle in and out of this program within 18 to 24 months. There are some that take their time. You have up to 6 years to actually finish your degree once you enter a degree program at the Commonwealth University. So yeah, great question.
And everyone here probably has an undergraduate degree in an educational discipline. What is the difference in expectations between an undergraduate course in education versus one of the master's courses? Like, what are some of the differences that they might notice?
So big difference is the amount of reading and writing. I think that is expected in a graduate level course. Graduate level courses are a lot of times less lecture based, and they're more discussion. So you really need to come prepared. You have to do the readings. You have to, work through some possible scenarios or case studies and bring potential solutions, because you're going to be working with your peers through that. Similarly, if it's in an asynchronous class, that's still being accomplished through breakout groups, teams, things of that nature. And, there's not as many traditional type of exams that you would find. There are going to be projects, job embedded type projects in some other courses. The core classes, I can tell you that some of the core classes, you'll be multitasking. So you might be involved in a project that you're doing independently, be part of a partner team, part of another team, and then possibly doing something as a whole class altogether. So it's a little bit different in the depth of learning and then also collaboration at the graduate level than the undergrad.
And I know that the tracks that exist now within the curriculum instruction masters, that's pretty new. So what's the benefit to the tracks? Like, what was the reason why we moved towards implementing the 6 different tracks that are there?
Yeah, so the tracks is, once again, to try to meet the interest needs of students and educators. The social emotional wellness behavior endorsement is actually a track that's run out of the special ed department. So we partner with other departments across campus for some of these tracks. And, a benefit of that would be you're actually getting an endorsement on your license. Social emotional behavior wellness learning is not new in education, but it really has been ramped up. The difference between that and the alt-ed track covers probably 90% of the endorsement, plus an additional 40 to 50% of knowledge and skills. We're looking at a possible infusion in the future of how we can combine these to get a deeper kind of track together with that. But currently, as it stands there. Alternative ed, there's a big need nationwide for knowledge and skills, and not just nationwide, but within the state of Pennsylvania, for alternative education and understanding and working with challenging youth and children are coming to school with more social issues than ever before. Obviously, an ESL license, it just makes you more marketable. So if you already teach, say, history, you're a history teacher, you can add on an ESL cert, then it makes you more marketable. Or you can take a job just working in certain school districts. They hire ESL educators that their main job is to work with students that English is not their primary language to help teach them. These 2 tracks are actually run out of our instructional technology department on campus. And the benefit of these is simply it gives you a leg up, so to say, on more technology-based instruction for the e-learning cert. And then the game design just gives you other tools that you can put in your toolbox as an educator so that you can make your own classrooms more engaging using different apps, different types of instructional gaming that exist. And that's continuously evolving. And the curriculum and content in those 2 classes are always being updated. And actually, all of our classes are being updated to stay current with current trends.
Sure. That's great. Awesome. Thank you.
So before we jump in ed leadership, if you have a question or a question as we go through this, please feel free to populate it in the chat room and we'll be sure to answer it. So ed leadership, or the next 2 tracks we're going to discuss, and we have 2 tracks here that we're just talking about tonight: the principal certification track and the supervisory of curriculum and instruction track. Both of them, you would receive a master's degree in education with a focus in educational leadership. Both of these programs are endorsed by the Pennsylvania Department of Ed. Both of these programs allow you to hold an administrative license. One would be for building principal, the other one would be K-12 supervisory curriculum instruction. Once again, it's 100% online. We currently have students from private charter schools, public schools, intermediate units from Pittsburgh to Philly, all across the state. When we have a synchronous class or session for all programs, including the curriculum instruction, they're always held in the evenings because we know teachers are teaching during the day. This can be done online with the exception of the practicum or internship, because there are different requirements for those internships. They have to be with a mentor from, typically it's your home school district, There's times that we partner you in outside your home districts as well. And that's more, you could do some of those experiences online, but there's going to be more face-to-face type of components and requirements there. You will have a seasoned administrator, typically of at least 3 years successful experience being your mentor as you're working through the program. And one thing we're very proud about in our program is we have 100% pass rate on the first attempt for the praxis exams for students that enter and come through our programs at Commonwealth University. So the supervisory coursework, just talk through it briefly here. So these first, if you look at these first block of classes, along with, actually, I should have made that block a little bigger, should have came down all the way through supervision of curriculum instruction, along with the homeschool community relations class. All those classes that are circled there are identical for the principal certification program. So the benefit of coming through this, if you're working on one of the licensures, you can, with a couple classes and an internship, add on the second license. But this one is for supervisory curriculum instruction, so you could see the nuances or the differences. You're going to have 2 classes designated heavily for curriculum and instruction, and one of them is the same that's in the curriculum instruction masters, and that's that curriculum theory and design, because we want to make sure you have that solid base. And then you're going to do a practicum with a district leader so that you get 180 hours of real world experience working with a district curriculum supervisor, assistant superintendent, typically. The principal certification, once again, if you look inside the box, all of those classes are the same. So once again, as you're working either towards either one of these licenses, you're kind of working through both. And it makes sense because you're working towards a leadership position, an administrative position in the state of Pennsylvania. So the standards are very similar across the board. And then there's going to be a little bit of nuances, differences. So the difference is you're going to take a class called the Effective School Principal, and then you're going to have a separate class on special education. And the principal's internship is 360 hours, which you would be working with a mentor principal. You get hours in the elementary, middle school, and high school levels that allow you to gain the benefit and understanding of how those processes and procedures are different based on grade levels and the needs of the children at those different levels. Pretty much every one of the courses have job embedded field work. So you're not only taking the coursework, doing that graduate level learning, knowledge and skills, but you're also going to be working on projects where you're in your school doing different activities, work that counts for 2 things. One, course requirement, but also some of the internship requirements you're building as you take your courses. That internship, as I said, you'll be working hand in hand with administrator, district, or building leader. And then you will also be learning and keeping current with all the different things that are going on with education, educational leadership, legislative changes, et cetera. So right now in the state of Pennsylvania, you might have heard the state of Pennsylvania funding formula is illegal under the Constitution. So the legislators right now are in there trying to figure out how figure out how we're going to fund schools in Pennsylvania. So we, as the program, stay current, make sure our students get the current, but then you're also going to be working with your mentors and your principals, learning and keeping current with all those different trends.
And Dr. Starmack, forgive me if you already mentioned this, but how might people identify who their district or building level mentor would be? Is that something that we would help them identify, or is there a process for that?
Yeah, so one of the requirements to come into, we're going to get to requirements for admission, is letters of recommendation. So for the educational leadership program, we're looking for at least one letter of recommendation from their current school leader, whether that's their building principal or district-wide leader. And typically we want to make sure that they're aware and endorsing you coming in, or a student coming in, a candidate coming into the program. And then once they're enrolled into the program, we meet with the student, discuss the course, talk about the layout of how fast they want to go through the program, kind of map out a program for them. And then at that point, right at the inception, within the first semester, we typically set up a triad meeting between the mentor, which we would have discussed with the student, myself or a colleague of mine, and then the student. And we discuss the internship requirements, and students actually start working and building their portfolio and logging hours and everything from day one, rather than waiting till the end. So that's a fluid, ongoing process all the way through the program.
And we have a question from an audience member. Looking online at what courses are being offered over the summer and fall, most of the class sections are already full. Is there any way we could still get into those classes, or will we have to enter the program next spring?
The answer is maybe. I can't guarantee, but there are some classes that you potentially could get in the summer. The classes for the fall definitely are not full. So we definitely could get you in for the fall. I couldn't guarantee seats for the summer, but we're in discussions right now, obviously, with the dean about potentially opening additional sections and things of that nature, because there's a greater request for summer. But there's no way you would have to wait all the way till spring. We'd be able to get you in for the fall.
That's great to hear. And I just want to, Dr. Jessica Hosley just joined us as well. Hi, Dr. Hosley, would you mind introducing yourself to the students who are in the audience?
Hi, Dr. Jessica Hosley, and just want to say hello and excited for who's ever here. I can't really see yet who's on, so I know probably some of my student teachers are. So just hello.
Great, thank you, Dr. Hosley.
So what's the job outlook for all three of these programs? We're facing a state and national shortage of teachers and administrators. So, advancing your knowledge and skills in getting a master's degree, and then also if you want to go into a certain specific administrative field, you're not going to have any trouble finding a job. With a large number of retirements, professionals leaving the field, there's even more opportunity now, and it will be over the next 5 to 10 years than there ever has been. And then with a master's degree, you have a little step up on knowledge and skills and more marketability for movement. I do want to talk a little bit. I'm going to wait a minute to talk a little bit. There's a big difference between a principal cert and supervisory cert and the power of those certs. I might as well do it right now. So a supervisory of curriculum instruction certification allows you to supervise staff. You typically step out of the teacher rank and you move into administrative ranks. So you're no longer protected by the union. If you would choose to join a union, you would actually now be in what's called an administrative compensation plan, or Act 93 in the state of Pennsylvania. There's an agreement between the board and those administrators. The only thing you could do is really supervise staff, curriculum, instruction, and professional development. You might be in charge of some state and federal grants, but that limits you, and that's really where your lane would be. With a K-12 principal certification, you're not only can be a school building principal, you can also be that same supervisor or director of curriculum instruction. The principal's license allows you to hold that position. The principal license also allows you to hold the position of a special ed director. There is a separate supervisory program through Commonwealth University through the special ed program for supervisory of special ed, but the principal certification is probably the most powerful other than the superintendency, because it allows you to hold these other administrative positions simply with the principal's license. So just keep that in mind. There's two other caveats. To gain a principal certification, you need at least 3 years experience as a school instructor. And it could be a school counselor, it could be some other role, school psychologist, et cetera. We have had people come through and get licensed as a principal. It's 3 years experience there. For the supervisory cert, you actually need 5 years of teaching experience. They don't let you move into the supervisor of curriculum instruction unless you actually have some teaching experience, and it's 5 years there because they want you to have that credibility. And when I say they, I'm talking PDE, the Pennsylvania Department of Ed. They issue the licensures. We just provide the program to get you the degree so that you're eligible for that license. Here are some of the alumni, the recent alumni that have come through our program and the different places that they're at. Like I said at the very beginning, I've trained probably close to 200 different educators, and probably 2/3 of them are administrators of some sort. Many of my graduates have gone on to get their superintendents and their doctorates, and many of them are now superintendents or assistant superintendents throughout the Commonwealth. What's the process for admission? Now, if you look on the left side here, we're talking specifically curriculum and instruction, which is that first program we discussed tonight. And you would do an online application, application fee, which I believe if you do apply and you attended tonight, that there could be a benefit there that I'll let Mr. Kresh talk about.
Yes, everyone. Sorry, yeah, real quick, everyone gets what we call a $35 scholarship, which is we are waiving the application fee.
So you'll get a scholarship if you go ahead and apply, since you attended tonight. You need your, we would need your official transcripts. Commonwealth University graduate policies, you have to have a minimum of a 3.0 GPA and undergrad. If you're borderline there, it's worth reaching out to me. We can potentially, no guarantee, but we could potentially offer provisional acceptance, but that's a case-by-case basis. Here's that 3 letters of recommendation. And for the curriculum instruction program, we're looking for those letters to talk about your ability to complete graduate work. We would need a resume, a statement of goals. This is where you get to provide a writing sample. It's typically paragraph, 2 paragraphs, about a half a page, no more than a page, where you're talking about why you want to enter this degree, why do you want to enter this program, what do you hope to gain, and where do you see yourself? How do you see yourself utilizing the knowledge and skills learned? And then you'll need your current PA teaching license for that program. For the educational leadership, a lot of this is identical, exactly the same. You're going to do the online application. We will also give you that $35 scholarship. Once again, you need unofficial transcripts. And if you did any graduate work anywhere, anybody, you would want to submit that as well, because we can look at that. We could transfer in up to 9 credits, something to keep in mind. You're going to do your statement of goals. And in that statement of goals, you want to explain why you're pursuing an administrative license, current resume, your certificate, and then 3 letters of recommendation that are talking about your leadership ability, capacity to be a successful building or school leader or district leader, your academic suitability, and your professional demeanor. So you'd want to kind of share that with the people that are going to be writing those letters. Yeah. This is my contact information. Since I'm the program coordinator, I'll be more than happy to assist anybody with direct questions, individual questions. We can set up a separate Zoom meeting, a phone conversation, etc. You can take a screenshot of this or simply copy that phone number down or my email, and I'd be glad to assist you.
And for anyone who's in the audience, if you have any questions, this would be the time. What are first, I would imagine we probably have a good amount of people watching who or watching the recording that are working full time. Can you talk a little bit about the work class life balance, right? So most of the classes are offered 5 to 8. Like, how much time are people spending outside of the class doing work, right? And I mean, what are some of the projects that they might be working on? I know you kind of briefly touched on that earlier in the presentation.
It's like anything in life, you get out what you put in, right?
Right.
So you come to class and you only put in time in class, you're not going to be prepared for the next class. As I said earlier, graduate level work, there is that front reading and expectations of writing and, collaborating, et cetera, to bring that to class, because it's the students that help drive the learning as much as the instructors. So they need to be prepared for class. In an asynchronous setting, there's not that 5 to 8 time frame. In a synchronous setting, the reason we block 5 to 8, a 3-hour block, is because we typically are online for maybe an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours. But then it gives students a chance for that last hour to meet with their teams to discuss and do projects. So they're only missing that 1 night a week from family and other obligations. And then I would say, depending on the course, some courses you're going to spend 5 to 10 hours a week outside of class time, reading, working on projects, writing, things of that nature. Other classes, it might be a little less, but I always try to think of it as a 3-to-1 ratio. It's 3 hours for every hour in class. Think about 3 hours outside of class. At the graduate level, like I said, I would say probably 5 of the classes in either of the programs, you're going to be at least at that. Other classes, it might be half. So an hour and a half for every hour in class. So a 3-hour class, you might have to spend an additional 7 hours outside, getting prepared, meeting with teams, doing things like that. Every student would be engaged or have the ability to set their own Zoom meetings up with their teammates so that they can meet at their own conveniences, times, and things like that. They don't have to use that hour on a Monday. We just set that up to try to create that life balance for people. Projects, examples of projects. We do an action research project and data-driven decisions. In curriculum theory and design, they'll be working on a curriculum project that there'll be, learning and reviewing and writing and maybe analyzing a curriculum and what are pros and cons and how can it be better designed and developed. School law and finance, they work on a finance team. They're researching an aspect of school finance, and then they come back and present it out to their peers. So those are some small examples.
We have a couple of questions from the audience here. One student asks here, if I've already completed a Master's of Education in Curriculum and Instruction at Bloomsburg, will I need to reapply for the graduate program or just send my transcripts?
So the answer to that question is if depends on how recently you graduated, 1. 2, likely, yes, you would have to reapply because you're becoming into a new program. And no, you wouldn't have to resend your transcripts. You would just notify us or give us permission because we would use your transcripts that are on file.
Yes, yep, absolutely. I am not yet PA certified. I'm student teaching currently. I was planning on doing that after I graduate in May. I'm looking to apply to the curriculum and instruction program. Will this delay my process?
The answer is no, it will not delay your process. What you would do is explain that in your statement of goals, as well as when you email grad admissions, you tell them that your certification is pending. We do early or provisional admittance for those situations. We're not going to wait for PDE because it could take, I think PDE is saying anywhere from 6 weeks to 3 months to process licenses right now. So, and especially in the spring, because that's when the bulk of students are graduating as teachers and the state gets overwhelmed. So no, we do not delay that for your admission, but it still would be one of those red flags that would show up that we would eventually need to see that license.
Right, that's great to hear. I'm currently employed and planning to begin the coursework for the M.Ed in curriculum and instruction for this upcoming summer. I would like to complete the program within 4 to 6 years. Based on what you know, past students, how many courses and credits would you suggest I take this summer? What about in the fall when the school year resumes? That's a good question.
So typically what I would advise students, and I don't know if my colleagues agree with this, but if you're going to start in the summer, I would say start with 1 graduate level class, get your feet wet, especially if you're on a 4 to 6 year plan. And in the fall, if it's your first year of teaching, I'd say take the fall semester off, focus on teaching, get your feet under yourself. And then come spring, if you feel confident with where you're at, then you can take another class that spring. If not, you continue and you take the spring off, and then we would pick you back up that next summer, taking 1 class that next summer. And then we could start adding classes in based on, what teaching is your main focus and responsibility. None of us want to see neglect your job responsibilities of working with those PK-12 students. And then grad school is secondary to that. Obviously, it's going to enhance your knowledge and skills, but at the same time, you can't be burdened or bogged down with that. Now, we do have some students that after the summer class say, well, I think I can do my first fall semester of teaching and take 1 class. Then we would enter you in and allow you to do that. You have the first week of class as drop add, just like as an undergrad program. So you can kind of see what the course all entails, meet the professor, discuss those types of things, and then make an informed decision if you need to drop it based on what you're experiencing, your regular school year. The issue with that starting in the fall is sometimes we start before your school year starts. So in other words, we start August 21st, and if you don't start teaching till August 28th, you might not know what your workload there looks like yet. But that would be my advice to a first year teacher with a 4 to 6 year plan.
And I know being that the programs are online, there might not be a ton of involvement, but would you be able to talk a little bit about the McDowell Institute, Dr. Starmack?
Yeah, so at Commonwealth University, we have for the past probably close to a decade, a benefactor who has Susan McDowell has provided us with some benefit. And what we have done is we have created, there's an institute called the McDowell Institute that focuses heavily on mental health and how we can better prepare educators in the area of working with colleagues, students mainly, in better mental health awareness, better mental health preparation. There's conversations of expansion. They do wellness programs, things like that, a lot of different trainings. And we at times have, we definitely use some of their resources throughout our program and in our courses. And we do at times have different modules that they have created and provide that enhance or is a value added to the learning that occurs here at the institution. The McDowell Institute partners heavily with PATN, which is a Pennsylvania Teachers Training Network. And there's a lot of the trainings that occur through PATN or PATN, however you want to say that training network that are available to our students right here through Commonwealth University.
Okay. Anybody else? Are there any other questions from anyone who's watching here? Graduate assistantships is sometimes is a question I hear about for those people who are not currently working full time. If they're going to be a full time student prior to entering the workforce, and we do have a number of graduate assistantships available that they are available on our website. If you go to bloomu.edu/grad studies, you'll see a listing for the GA positions, and that's, a GA, for those of you who might not know, is a part-time position where you work for the university, and you could work at the Bloomsburg campus, you could work at the Lock Haven campus or the Mansfield campus, wherever you're at, or the Clearfield campus, I should say, as well, where again you would work anywhere between 10 and 20 hours per week, and in return you would get a stipend, and we would pay for part of your coursework. So that's a nice way to help, again, offset the cost and increase your ROI for a program like this. And one more topic before we sign off here, and Dr. Starmack, you had briefly touched on this earlier about how there's a national teacher shortage. How does that extend to some of the careers that these degrees would be preparing people for, whether it's the principal or the supervisor or becoming a master teacher through the C&I program? Well,
so first of all, teaching shortages is a real issue. Substitute teachers, this has been going on for probably close to 15 years, where we can't get quality or get anybody subbing. On top of that, I'll just give a short fact. The state of Pennsylvania historically certifies about 25,000 educators a year. The last 3 years, it has drastically dropped. It was about 9,000 3 years ago. It was 7,500 2 years ago. And this past year, 6,400. That's all. So you think about, we're not getting enough people certified to fill the jobs. So if you're entering these programs, you're enhancing your knowledge and skills, you're making yourself a more attractive candidate, so that because we're starting to see a trend that the state is talking about lowering standards, right? So if you're coming into this program, you're enhancing your skills, which the C&I program or any of the ed leadership programs, if you're instructional one teacher, you need 24 postbaccalaureate credits. And it behooves you to go in and get a master's degree because it moves you on the pay scale regardless. And then administratively, if you make the decision that you want to make a bigger change, and you're really, you feel passionate about being able to impact change, or schools or staff, students, community on a bigger level, administration is where you'd want to go. And with administration, sometimes it's easier to move from district to district as an administrator. So maybe there's some things that you're not happy with or whatever, and you want to switch jobs. You can always advance up into administration, and moving in administration is typically easier. Once you become a teacher, once you get beyond maybe 12 years, it's very difficult to move, only because of the financial. A lot of other districts aren't going to pay you with 12 years experience. They'll pick somebody up with less experience because they're a little cheaper as far as payroll. Two more things I think that are critical to explain to the audience. One is, if anybody decides they want financial aid is available for graduate level work. You only have to be considered half-time. And at graduate level, half-time is 4.5 credits, because 9 credits is considered full-time. Well, obviously, we don't have any 1 or 1.5 credit courses. So you would have to enroll in a minimum of 2 courses per semester that you would be wanting that financial aid. So just, that's one thing. And old age just creeped in and drew a blank on the second one. It'll come to me, but I want to open the mics just to my 2 colleagues if they have any value added information to add that I might not have touched upon that they feel beneficial for the audience. Jess or Nate.
Well, just going back to what Dr. Starmack said earlier about the program and the course content and how it works for people who are working full time. 2 things. One, the idea that it's online has really been valuable to almost all of our teachers and administrators. It is so hard to nowadays, as busy as teachers and administrators are, to do it any other way. And this is a fantastic program in terms of doing that, but not only doing that, but really working with grad students to meet their needs. As Dr. Starmack, once again, he said that earlier, not only does the program, but each course really works to meet your needs within the assignment. So there are competencies, obviously, that we want you to achieve within each course, but then beyond those competencies, if there's an assignment in a project, for example, our projects readings course, if there's an interest you have in a specific type of curriculum related to your grade level that you teach, and you want to do a project on that, that's what you get to do. And then you get to take that immediately the next week or the next term or what have you, and apply that work in your work setting. And that is really a valuable thing that this program does. And then just one other thing, I could talk forever about Alt-Ed and at-risk and how important that is, but I'm going to bypass that just to say again that earlier in the conversation, Dr. Starmack mentioned the idea of how important discussion was and coming prepared for discussion. I just this last Thursday in my class, had a comment from one of our students who's graduating, and she said that she could not believe that in addition to all the assignments and the lectures and so forth, how much she got from the other students in terms of the discussions and the networking and finding out what other schools were doing on certain issues and so forth. That discussion and also at least in my courses, the high level of writing assignments and being able to express yourself and do research in those in your areas of interest. Those things I think combine to make both the principal cert program, the Ed leadership program, the curriculum instruction with any of the tracks, but obviously I teach mostly in the alternative ed track, but so I can speak for that. We just think it's a great program for you to consider based on those things, plus the other things that Dr. Starmack mentioned earlier.
Thank you, Dr. Hosley.
So the question in the chat room is, are the classes online synchronous or asynchronous? And the answer is yes. Some classes are synchronous, some classes are asynchronous. In the core for the curriculum instruction program, there's at least 2 classes that are going to have a synchronous component. The other 2 classes potentially could be asynchronous, or you might be able to take it's synchronously depending on what cycle of the semester or what semester that class is offered. Certain tracks that you pick, I know the IT tracks, they're going to be synchronous because instructional technology teaches everything synchronously. Other tracks could be totally asynchronous. The interest-based track, we can work something out that works best for you. The Ed leadership tracks, those programs, once again, it's a mixture of synchronous and asynchronous. I would probably lean towards 60 to 70% of the courses are going to be synchronous, have some type of synchronous component, where only 20 to 30% of it would be asynchronous on the Ed leadership side.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Dr.
And,
Tess, do you have anything you want to add to our audience?
Oh, and I just wanted, I think a lot of times undergraduates, because of COVID and everything, when we say synchronous, that you may think it's synchronous like two or three times a week at a certain time. The synchronous classes are at night, and Dr. Starmack, correct me if I'm wrong, it's one night a week for an 2 or plus hours, but it's not what you would think being at the undergraduate level, when they might be times when you're thinking, oh my goodness, what if we're teaching? It's not like how it was when at the undergraduate level. It's a specified time and it's after your work hours. So if you are teaching and you have a job, you're able to do it.
And that is correct. And typically, at least not in my synchronous classes, I've been teaching online for 9 years. We moved the Ed leadership programs online 9 years ago to stay competitive across the state. And my synchronous sessions, 1.5 to 2 hours, typically max. Then, like I said, students might sign off and then they might re-sign in with their teams to do a little bit of work afterwards. Not every week. Some classes that are synchronous might meet out of a 15-week semester, 14 of the 15 weeks. Others might meet every other week. It depends on the class, the content, and the projects of that course. And the instructors are cognizant of that because everyone's time is valuable, including our students. So we want to value that time. But we also want the learning to be very meaningful and quality.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily need to be a full-time teacher to be enrolled in the program, but it is built for people who are working full-time and have other responsibilities. And right. Dr. Starmack and Dr. Halsey, would you be able to speak to, like, do you normally get a good mix of students who are enrolled full-time versus part-time, working versus full-time student? How does that normally look?
The majority of our students are full-time employees, and then they're part-time grad students. We do have, in the curriculum instruction tracks, we do have a number of students that graduated from undergrad. There may be student athletes, and they come back in, get a grad assistantship, and then they're full-time grad students. That's not unheard of. We have quite a few of them. They're mainly in the curriculum instruction track, not the leadership track. And then, like I said, most students are doing this part-time. We don't have a whole lot full-time because they're working full-time. They have a life. So they're doing this part-time. And most students, it's 18 to 24 months. However, you have the capacity to stretch it out to 6 years if you wanted to.
Sure. That's great. So I don't see any other questions in the Q&A or in the chat. So I think we're probably good to wrap it up. So everybody, again, thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, this event was recorded. And I'll be editing this and getting it timestamped, and we'll get it up on the website and sent out to everybody who joined us. Again, and everyone who is either watching live or is watching the recording, we will waive the application fee. Just please reach out to me when you go to apply, and I can waive that on our end. Please do not hesitate to contact any of us if you have any questions. We work for you, and we are happy to do so. So we look forward to hearing from everybody in the future, and hope you have a great night.